Agenda. Oh, see, I'm trying to play speed up rules. I'm sorry, Jennifer. Go ahead.
For the State Treasurer, Mr. Bakler.
Hello?
Mr. Rosensteel.
Here.
For the Superintendent of Public Instruction, Ms. Dumont. Here. For the State Controller, Mr. McGuire.
Here.
Ms. Hendricks.
Here.
Mr. Lawson.
Here.
Mr. Unterman.
Here.
Chairperson Dillon, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Alrighty. Now I'd entertain a motion to approve the board agenda.
So moved. Michael Lawson.
Alrighty,
Second, Tom Underman.
it's been moved by Michael and seconded by Michelle. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Alrighty, any abstentions? We've approved our agenda. We have 2 action items coming from the Compensation Committee that met earlier this morning. The first recommendation is to adopt a compensation structure for the new DCIO position with a salary range of $272,000 to $408,000 and a maximum incentive opportunity of 80%. And then the second one is to adopt the recommended policy language changes to Section 700C of the TRB Board Policy Manual that incorporate the conforming changes relating to the new comparator groups and the updated salary ranges for the designated investment staff and the CEO. Do you need me to repeat any of that, those of you that are in Glendale?
Nope.
Nope.
Alrighty. Is there any questions?
I'll move it.
It's from a committee, so it's already been moved.
Oh, good. All right, never mind.
Any further discussion?
I move approval. This is Tom Underman.
Tom, we're good. It's a recommendation from a committee, so it's moved through the committee. So we don't need a second. I don't have anyone ready to speak, so I will put the question before you. Jennifer, could you please call roll?
Mr. Bakler.
Yes.
Mr. Rosensteel.
Yes.
Ms. Dumont.
Yes.
Mr. McGuire.
No.
Ms. Hendricks.
Yes.
Mr. Lawson.
Yes.
Mr. Unterman.
Yes.
Chairperson Dillon, would you care to vote?
Sure.
Okay, your motion passes.
Thank you. Alrighty. Our next item is the contracts requiring board approval. Robin, is that your item? Come on forward.
So this item is requesting board approval for a non-competitively bid contract with the Pension Consulting Alliance, acting as the board's general investment consultant for a year from June 1st of 2013 through May 31st of 2014. The item lists the existing contracts with PCA, 2 of which are evergreen with no dollar cap, so that's why you see them as just 2 evergreen contracts there. And then the other dollar amounts are associated with the Pension Consulting Alliance contract for private equity consulting services to the board. This item is necessary because of a management error in terms of we missed the intended due dates for the RFP release and submission. So acknowledging that that was a mistake on our end in terms of not recognizing the timeline and getting that in front of you in time to appoint the new consultants at the start of this fiscal year.
All right, are there any questions? Paul?
Robin, what you just said is a little different than what was written in the staff report. The staff report suggested that there was a determination made that there wasn't enough staff capacity to do this, and not that there was a mistake. So could you clarify whether this was just an oversight, like you forgot to do it, or whether there was a determination made when it came time to do it that there weren't staff resources, because as described here, there was all the work on various other things like Business Direct?
Well, I guess I'm not meaning to speak for everybody, but in terms of our end of the house, we had a request in February that we lost in the backlog. So in terms of the procurement organization, there was a request that came in from the investment area asking that we get started on an RFP. Now, in that course of time, we were, we definitely lost it. I mean, there's no question about that. I don't want to mislead you there. So that's the backlog, and we lost it in the backlog. I think in terms of the actual functions of staff and management in that time period, we were obviously working, using resources in the implementation of Business Direct, both in the operating area and in financial services. So, that's why I framed it in the way I did.
It's a little different in the written description, seems to me.
Michelle?
Well, and I can give a little more color. I don't know if Chris is still on the phone, but there were a number of items in the, I guess, in the queue.
In the queue, right.
RFPs and what we call ASPs, which are a type of RFP, and then contracts. And so there were a number of items, including the one in question here. And so that's what you're kind of seeing in the write-up here. And so I don't know if that helps clarify. So there were a number of items having to do with investment manager contracts and RFPs.
So when were,
I can comment, Chris Selman. Starting in about December, as we encountered slowdown with contracts, we created a hierarchy of all the investment contracts and basically created a queue of what needed to get done. And due to the implementation process, we're trying to work through those, but even contract negotiations, as they come up, or amendments, have to jump in that line as well. Our managers have given us some fee reductions. So to date, Michelle, you can get them up to date on where we stand in terms of how many RFPs we've issued and then the contracts that we've gotten done.
so when were you aware that you weren't going to be able to go through the RFP process and with the board or with the committee and have the committee be able to make a selection through an RFP process by the time that the contract was expiring a month ago? When were you aware that we were going to miss that deadline?
I think I heard the question. I wish I had better foresight of how things were going to go. We were aware that there was backlogs, but we weren't given timeframes on when stuff would be able to get worked through. And I know Robin can address from the contract side. So, in hindsight, it'd been better to come to you probably in March or May and say, this contract's coming up, we're going to have to extend it. But we never knew when we were going to be able to get this out. I still not sure when we'll be able to get this out on the street. We're extending it for a year, but my hope would be that we'd have the RFP out in the fall, and you guys could have interviews early in the year, and we could start up the new contract.
So my just to give you some documentation, it was on the February agenda for the investment committee just as a regular item, and then beginning in March, the investment committee work plan did say it could be delayed in April. I'm sorry, I said March. Beginning in April, in the April meeting, it said potentially delayed. So that was true in April and June. We didn't raise it as again, error on my part, didn't raise that at the level of the procurement responsibilities. And like I said, we had received a request from the investment area that for this RFP in February. So again.
So where does that leave us if we didn't approve the 1-year extension today? Would we not have, would the investment committee not have an investment consultant?
Yes. Yep.
So we kind of really don't have much choice, because I think it would be very hard for us to say that we were doing our job if we chose not to have a general investment consultant. I guess my concern is, I mean, first of all, I do think that rather than these being brought to the board or the committee at this late date, that we should have been, that when you knew that you weren't going to be able to do it in time, that's when it probably should have come to us. So we could say, okay, or we could say, no, we really think it's a high priority, please figure out a way to prioritize this. Because I think right at this point, we're not really left with a choice. And I think this is particularly, and we've had this come to us before. In April, I know there was a TIA CREF extension, which was, the timing was the same, which I'm not that pleased with that. But in this case, I think it's even more important because this is the board hiring its own consultant, and we don't do very many hiring of consultants to ourselves. So I don't. I would just like to see that in the future, when staff knows they're not going to be able to go through the RFP process, to have, and therefore there's going to be the necessity to just extend a contract, that we know at the earliest possible time, rather than a month after that contract expired.
Jerry?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have the same concerns as expressed by Mr. Rosensteel, being 2 months basically into this extension. But I have a question, Chris, if you can hear me. What would be a realistic time frame if you were going to initiate this RFP now? What would be a realistic time frame to actually bring a new consultant on board? Would it be 3 months, 5, 6? Because basically right now, we were giving a 1-year extension of a fairly significant contract, and I would just soon see it be a 6 or 8 month extension as opposed to a 1-year extension if that was practical. So could you give me your thoughts on that, Chris?
Yeah, no, Terry, I appreciate that, and I appreciate Paul's comments as well. I'm basing my, I know on our side we've already written the RFP, we've written the questions, we've done all the work, and we know the peer group that we're going to go out and issue this to. Sorry for the background noise. But I can't give you any visibility on when it would get through the contracts group. We've only been able, and Michelle can correct me, we've only been able to put out 1 and I think 2 RFPs on the street since November. Those were from money managers. Paul, you could definitely make up a case that your consultant contract's more important. The money management areas, we had not issued an RFP for over 3 years, and we were down to one case using an ETF as a surrogate for being able to hire a manager. So right now, this one is one of the priorities. Given the emphasis the board has made, I imagine it will get done sooner rather than later. But I don't have a date. I don't have any visibility with contracts on when things are going to be able to move through. As I said, it gets impeded because some of our managers have given us fee breaks. We have one that's a fee break that has been in the system for 4 months. Thankfully, the manager lowered the billing, but we have not gotten the contract amended in the 4-month period. So we're just still in that tough implementation phase where we're working things out.
Robin?
I believe that the request is being processed. We need the draft statement of work and evaluation criteria. We'll issue the RFP. If I'm just trying to do calculations in my head, so I would say that there would be no problem in getting an RFP on the street by the end of September, and then depending on the response period that you would like, if it's a 30-day response period, then there's an evaluation process. I hesitate to say that it could be to the board in November. I would be much more comfortable saying January or February. for the interview process? That's what I would, in terms of realistic timetables, that's what I
Well,
would.
just to point out to the board, you guys do the finalist interview as a group. So, and what we found is it typically takes 3 hours, even if they're just 2 finalists. Hopefully we'd have 3. So we'd probably end up scheduling a special board meeting out there in the fall if we're able to get it on that timeline. Whichever we would, we'd schedule a special board meeting for you to interview the finalists. And also, it was a request of the old board or the old investment committee, and obviously quite a few key people have changed since 3 years ago, that we've written this RFP so that you could hire 1 or 2 consultants, and we can divide the services in half. But you'll have the choice of whether you just want to retain 1 consultant or potentially hire 2. And last 3 years ago, there was a lot of satisfaction with PCA service. I think the big concern was that they had been our consultant for over 25 years without any change. And so the board just had a lot of angst, didn't want to make a change, but the committee had a lot of angst about continuing that too far.
Thank you,
Madam
Chris.
Chair.
Terry, go ahead.
So then, Chris, would you comment, I know this isn't significant, but it's maybe just sending a message or a matter of principle, but would you feel that we made a 9-month extension to this contract? That would be plenty of time to complete this process?
Well, I think in the write-up, Terry, and Robin, correct me if I'm wrong, and Michelle and Chris, that if the RFP process is finished earlier than this 1 year, we can terminate this contract early. So we're not tied into the 1 year?
That's correct.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that.
That's okay, that's okay.
Bottom of CRB 11.
So, so under the last sentence, in purpose.
So I think we have the freedom to do what you're asking us to
Thank
do.
you.
That was just my point.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Michelle, you have been in, did you?
It was just to make that point.
Okay.
Because we could terminate it early. I can understand sending a message that we want to get it started as soon as possible, but I mean, we could.
Terry, if I had a reasonable confidence that we get done on time, in that kind of a time frame, I'd say yes, but I don't have any visibility.
Give ourselves flexibility.
Paul?
I don't know, I kind of like Terry's idea. I mean, if you can't get it done in 9 months, then you got to come back and tell us why not.
It's only 7 now, though.
It's 8, but yeah, right, whatever. We're 1 month, but I don't know, I mean, I like shortening it just because I think it really is important to move forward on it. And Chris, I want to make it very clear, this has nothing to do with PCA. And whether, at least speaking for myself, what my feeling is about PCA, it does have a lot to do with the fact that I think making the decision to delay this was making a decision for the board about who our consultant is. And the important thing here is that the board has to have our own consultant separate from the staff. And so it concerns me that staff, where we need to have this separation of independence, that staff was taking action not with any ill design, but the fact was that the actions made decisions for the board about who the board's independent consultant on investments should be. And that's what concerns me specifically about this. So I feel that every day that we are now under this extended contract with PCA, that this board has not exercised its own independent determination to continue to have PCA as consultants. So that's why I would really be very concerned that we not just open it up for another year. I really think it's very important that we act, that this board get the opportunity to act very quickly on hiring our own independent investment consultant.
So Robin,
Paul, I hear you loud and clear. I have delayed a couple of Stevens implementation ideas and delayed an important real estate RFP to put yours in front. And in the future, we'll make yours first and make sure we get it done on time.
Michelle?
I would just hate to see us rush forward. I'd rather go for the year, give ourselves the flexibility and the time to make a very thoughtful decision. Not that, 7 months versus a year would necessarily make a lot of difference, but it could. And, if it's accountability to it moving forward as quickly as possible, we could ask for that via CIO report or Robin, at our upcoming meetings. But I personally would feel more comfortable just going forward with the one-year contract, knowing we can cut it short if we need to, and giving ourselves the flexibility to move forward.
So Robin, it's my impression that this now lays at your door for contracts and getting it out.
So we work with our business partners to create the RFP because they're the experts in the content. We shepherd it through the process and make sure we're providing good procurement and contract advice. So what we have done is we're working in collaboration with the investments branch on how to change the RFP from the last version that we issued to incorporate the concept of the two potential consultants, make sure that they help us understand the appropriate target audience to the extent that it's beyond just the public notice. We want to make sure that we've got a timeline in place that allows for the appropriate initial evaluation before it's brought to you. We'll need to make sure we get it on schedule for a board item. So I'm speaking here not having done all the staff work in combination with our customers about what that's going to lay out to be, but I feel that the estimates that I've given you are not unreasonable, and I'm making sure to look at the body language next to me because I'm not meaning to speak for all of the parties involved, but I think that's realistic.
Okay. I think all the parties involved know that the board has some level of anxiety of going too much further and waiting too much longer, so we would hope that you would do that as expeditiously as possible.
And we have the, the shell, all the business side, the investment side of the RFP ready to go. So we should be able to get that.
So we do have an investment committee meeting, well, I shouldn't say investment committee meeting. We do have a date set aside of December 2nd. So we do have the ability to firm up something there if we need to, if it's done by that time. I don't know if Chris had plans to do some sort of other educational type of thing with us, but we do have that date. So let's hold it firm for now.
So perhaps I can offer that we'll come in this space in September with the actual timetable that we've worked out. Does that?
Great. That would be great. So in light of all this, Robin, that there is the backlog because of the implementation of Business Direct. Are you aware of any others that might be in the pipeline or might not be in the pipeline that we need to be aware of?
I didn't bring my complete inventory. What we have done in particular with investments is have them help us prioritize so that, because the RFP process is the most time intense, we've been working with our business partners to prioritize the release. So we've got, I will tell you, there are several investment opportunities that we need to pursue. Then we've got the TIA-CREF, that large RFP. We're also working on the pension solution RFP. So those are the big ones in our queue right now. I am not aware of significant other items as I just sit here and think, but.
If you take a look and think about that and are prepared to talk to us about it in September when we meet again? Yes. Yes. Alrighty.
I can tell you, Investments has 5 RFPs in the queue right now. Yours is first. And then your next consultant contract come up is the PCA private equity consultant. You just renewed the real estate RFP last year.
And I believe I looked at the PCA private equity, and it's up next June, but there are options to extend on it. This one did not have options to extend. That was what we missed.
Alrighty. Because the board has a high level of interest in this, as you start to put that together, you could send us updates. It's not anything we're voting on, so informational updates, email us or something like that, Robin? Alrighty. Are there any further comments on this issue? It is.
A comment. Actually, I wanted to sort of follow up on Paul's comments, and I think, I just think as a board, we just want information in order to make good decisions, and we want to be proactive instead of reactive. And so I do appreciate the request for information for the September meeting, Robin. I think it'd be helpful to kind of, we can take the truth. It'd be more helpful to kind of hear what's really going on and then be able to kind of have a more proactive stance as a board to direct staff. So I think you're getting that sense from at least some of us on the board that's a need that we have, because obviously at the end of the day, we need to be equipped with information to make our best decisions. So so if we can get that info item in September, I think that would be great. And I am concerned about, some of the backlogs and the impacts, in particular with the investment staff. And so look forward to us kind of trying to move things along.
Alrighty. Are there any further questions or comments? This is.
Yeah, this is Tom Unterman.
Thanks, Tom. Go ahead.
Yeah, I recognize the seriousness of the delay and sort of the slip in terms of board responsibility for our own consultants, and that is significant. But I also really appreciate the candid way the staff addressed this, without sugarcoating or trying to hide the ball or anything else. I think I appreciate that.
Thank you, Tom. All right, any further? This is an action item, so I would entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move.
So moved.
All right, it's been moved by Michelle. Michael, was that you?
Tom.
Okay, and Tom seconded.
Sure.
Is there any further discussion?
Dana, Michael has left the building.
Oh.
FYI.
Well, he and Elvis are probably hanging out then. All righty. We'll do a roll call on this then. Jennifer?
Mr. Beekler?
Yes.
Mr. Rosensteel?
Yes.
Ms. Zumot?
Yes.
Mr. McGuire?
Yes.
Ms. Hendricks?
Yes.
Mr. Unterman?
Yes.
Chairperson Dillon, would you care to vote?
Sure, yes.
Your motion passes.
All righty, thank you. All righty, we have PCA on board for the next little while. Informational items, we don't think we have any new business or review of information requests. Do we have any persons from the public that might, other than, yes, you're right, Michelle, other than the update. Do we have anyone from the public that wishes to speak? Seeing none, we will adjourn.